Hello everyone. In this video, I want to talk about the 3D online soccer game I'm currently developing as my very first devlog. The reason I decided to make this game is because the 2026 World Cup is coming next summer, and on top of that, I've been playing soccer for a long time. It's been about 15 years since I first started, and even now I still play regularly as a hobby. With the World Cup coming up, I wanted to create something that could get people excited together, not just people who already play soccer, but also people who have never played before. That's what led me to start developing this 3D online soccer game. The kind of game I want to make is the closest thing possible to real soccer. I want players to move with the same kind of feel that real soccer players have on the pitch. That's the kind of game I'm aiming for. The first thing I worked on was dribbling. At first, I wrote a simple system where the ball would be kicked forward with a fixed amount of force whenever the player touched it. But when I tested it, the ball would just fly way too far away and it didn't feel like dribbling at all. So I increased the ground friction and adjusted it until the ball would stop at a more natural distance. For this part, I watched a lot of Premier League and La Liga footage over and over again to study how players actually move. One thing I noticed was that the size of each touch changes depending on speed. When players are moving fast, their touches are bigger in order to maintain speed. When they are moving slowly, their touches are smaller so they can control the ball more closely. So in this game, the size of each dribble touch is also affected by the player's speed. But the most important part is how the player actually controls all of this. Players like Cole Palmer or Lamine Yamal probably aren't consciously thinking about every single touch. They're not deciding one by one exactly how strong or what angle each touch should be. They're probably thinking more like, I want to go this way, or I want to beat this defender. And the touch itself happens almost unconsciously. That's why I wanted dribbling in this game to feel like you're controlling an actual professional soccer player. So I made the game automatically calculate the touch direction, touch power, and approach to the ball, and the player controls movement on top of that. Because of this, dribbling now feels much closer to the way a real player would move. I also implemented a double touch. When the player performs it, the ball is shifted to the side before moving forward. Adding this makes attacking play feel more realistic. At the same time, it also makes defending much harder, so this is something I'll need to keep balancing carefully. Next, I worked on passing. I added a system that kicks the ball toward the center of the screen, so the player can pass the ball in the direction they are aiming. To make that easier, I placed a reticle in the center of the screen. When I tested passing with bots on the field, I realized that it was actually pretty hard to match the ball cleanly to a teammate. But in real soccer, professional players don't spend a lot of time carefully adjusting their direction before every pass. Even with opponents nearby, they can still play accurate passes into their teammates. So, to make the experience feel closer to real soccer, I added pass assist here as well. As long as the player aims in roughly the right direction, the ball can be delivered toward a teammate. That should make quick and fluid passing combinations much easier to achieve. At the same time, soccer is not just about passing to feet. You also need to be able to pass into space. So I also prepared a type of pass that does not use assist. Finally, I worked on shooting. For shooting, I set it up so the ball is kicked toward the reticle. The part I cared most about here was curve. I designed it so that when the player inputs a shot, the game records how far the reticle moved, and based on that distance, it fills a curve gauge. One thing I personally really like is that the horizontal bar of the cross-shaped reticle acts as the curve gauge, and the vertical bar works as the power gauge. My first idea for curve was to define a curve value and a decay value, and then gradually reduce the curve value over time. In other words, the farther the ball traveled, the harder it would be for it to keep curving. But after testing that system, it didn't feel very realistic. So I started looking into how curve actually works in real life, and I came across something called the Magnus effect. To explain it simply, when a ball moves while spinning, the airflow becomes faster on one side of the ball and slower on the other side. That creates a pressure difference, which produces a sideways force that pulls the ball toward the lower pressure side. That is what makes the ball bend. The important part here is that curve becomes stronger when the ball has more speed and more spin, and the sideways force created by that effect builds up over time. So that meant my original idea was actually wrong. Instead of becoming harder to curve over distance, it makes more sense that the ball's curve becomes more noticeable as it travels farther. Because of that, I changed the shooting system so that the shot itself only applies side spin to the ball. Then, separately, I wrote code that reads the ball's spin, direction, and speed, and uses that to generate the actual curve force. This system can also be used for crosses. So that's where the project is right now. Next, I want to implement features like defending and goalkeeping. I explained the systems pretty simply here, but the actual implementation has been much more complicated than it sounds, and there have been a lot of small bugs along the way. It's already taken me about 8 months to get this far. There are still a lot of things I haven't touched at all yet, especially things like models and animations, so I'd like to keep sharing the progress here on this channel. If you're interested, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed. Thanks for watching.